We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Welcome to the Gone Fission podcast, your one-stop source for news about the emerging nuclear renaissance and environmental cleanup of Department of Energy sites across the nation. Now, here's your host, Michael Butler.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gone Fission podcast. Today is Monday, August 4th, 2025. We have a very special episode for you today. Our guest is Charles Oppenheimer, the grandson of the man you just heard speak, Dr. J. Robert Oppenheimer, known in history as the father of the atomic bomb for his role as director of the Los Alamos Laboratory during the Manhattan Project. We'll be talking to Charles in just a few moments. As we've announced, the Gone Fission podcast has expanded its scope of coverage to include the emerging nuclear renaissance, or as our guest today, Charles Oppenheimer, prefers to call it, the nuclear exuberance. Before we get to our very interesting interview, let me say that we will continue to cover the environmental cleanup of Department of Energy sites nationwide, just as we have for the past 4 years. But an increasing part of our coverage will be devoted to advanced nuclear technology, including small modular reactors, new nuclear fuel types, uranium enrichment, and more. Right now, I would like to ask you to become a subscriber to our YouTube channel. You'll receive notification of new episodes, and you will support continued production of the podcast going forward. It's free. Just hit the subscribe button. And if you have a comment or would like to reach out to me or become a sponsor of this podcast, you can contact me at mbutler@gonefissionpodcast.com. I look forward to hearing from you. We launched this new coverage and our new look at the Nuclear Opportunities Workshop in Knoxville last month. The meeting room and the agenda were jam-packed, fertile ground for nuclear news. In one announcement, the Department of Energy's Oak Ridge National Laboratory and artificial intelligence company Atomic Canyon signed a memorandum of understanding to streamline the licensing process for nuclear power plants using artificial intelligence for license application reviews. The agreement outlines their shared intention to use high-performance computing to create high-fidelity simulations that ensure the safety of designs while accelerating licensing using artificial intelligence to automate aspects of the review process. Our guest today is a very special individual whom I've been wanting to meet for a long time. Charles Oppenheimer is the grandson of atomic pioneer Dr. J. Robert Oppenheimer. You will recall that 2 years ago, his grandfather was the subject of a blockbuster film directed by Christopher Nolan. The movie featured a host of major stars, including Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., and Cillian Murphy. It won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Today, Charles Oppenheimer directs the Oppenheimer Project, an initiative inspired by his grandfather's vision for a safer future built on international cooperation, clean energy, and reduced nuclear threats. He is also active in Silicon Valley, focusing on financing for nuclear projects, which was the topic of his remarks at the Nuclear Opportunities Workshop. Here's our interview with Charles Oppenheimer. Our guest now is Charles Oppenheimer. We're at the Nuclear Opportunities Workshop in Knoxville, Tennessee, where Charles has been a featured speaker today, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, we're very glad to have you. Let's start by talking about your message to the group today. There are over 1,000 attendees at this year's conference, and you talked to them about some of the issues involved in financing nuclear projects. And can you give us a little insight into what you had to say to the group today?
Sure. Yeah, when I got into supporting nuclear energy industry, I came around to the main problem in the industry is the financing and paying for it. It's not really the science side, which is great. Our nuclear science is great. So that's kind of the main thing I've been focusing on. If the financial problems in buying nuclear and getting it online, or if the problems are mainly financial, how do you solve those financial problems? So the majority of the discussion today was talking about how do you make a nuclear project viable so that the buyers of it actually want to put money in, and then the capital markets come and support it.
One of the things you talked about is spreading the risk, the financial risk, that in the past the utilities have been primarily the ones to take the risk, and that there's kind of a new model that's emerging, which you're working on to spread that risk. Some, can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, first we could characterize the traditional model as utility is the sole buyer, and they put the equity and the debt and all risk into doing a nuclear project, which doesn't sound as bad as it could be. The downside is that nuclear projects are so big, if it goes south, you can lose your business. And I don't think any of us would buy a product that if you couldn't pay for it, you lose your whole house. So that's kind of the primary problem. To reduce that, bringing more people into a deal, especially investors who are paid to take early risk. A utility can't and shouldn't take risk. If you can get external investors into a new nuclear build, want to take that risk and then get paid for it, that's effectively the nuclear developer model. And it starts by moving it away from the utility on the early risky stage and have investors do that part. That's kind of that.
And there's the idea of something being repeatable, where you can do it over and over again, which drives down the cost over time and makes it more attractive financially too, right?
Yeah, I mean that is a proven theory, a proven part of the most successful nuclear projects in the world, like France's program, or any large infrastructure project. The only way to really drive certainty and cost down is to repeat things. So that theory is simple and it's true. The problem is, how do you get there? How do you get to 1, 2, 5, 10 projects? You have to get to the first one before you can get to the 10th one, and that's kind of where we're stalled as an industry.
But you think that small modular reactors offer a lot of promise for that, since they are smaller and more self-contained, that they have the better capability of being repeatable and becoming more affordable over time?
They've certainly sold that promise. I'm of the belief that I want to see it delivered before I really buy it. So that promise has been there since the beginning of the nuclear industry. Hyman Rickover is famous for talking about it with his paper. It's always been an aspect of nuclear designers say, I've got a new, cheaper way. But what counts in a nuclear project is its operational capacity. It has to be proven in real life. So the SMR industry sounds good, but until it's proven in operations, we have some challenges that we're seeing now. That kind of is a disconnect between the makers of the technology and the buyers.
So we need to see one built and operating, and more behind it before that's a...
That's right. Yeah.
Let's talk about you a little bit. I've read some, outside of today's discussion with this group, I've read some things that you've said in the past, and one of the things that intrigued me was you called nuclear energy a bipartisan energy source. And I thought that was a very interesting way to present it. And can you just tell us a little bit about what you mean when you say that nuclear is bipartisan?
Yeah, I think it's got this unique position in the economy right now, where effectively those with climate concerns have come over to the side of supporting nuclear energy. And in the past, it actually was almost the opposite. Say the environmental side of the political spectrum said, for a while, nuclear is dangerous and it's dirty and we don't want it. And that group has said, actually, due to climate change and also the science and facts of nuclear energy, we support it. And so that's kind of joining something that was kind of a little on the other political side. And so where many things are controversial, nuclear energy, oddly, is not. We've seen the last bills passed in Congress before this administration, hugely bipartisan, 90 landslide support. And then in this current administration, the only thing that's left that's in the carbon-free category is nuclear energy. So I just think it has a tremendous capacity to be a unifying force, not only in this country where there's political divides, but around the world. Something so important that we just have to operate on it and set a small about it. That's our Oppenheimer view.
Well, that's an interesting viewpoint, and one I think is important to as nuclear power continues to develop. Just to talk a little bit about you, you have one of the most famous surnames in the nuclear business. You're the grandson of Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, and you run a couple of foundations that carry on your grandfather's some of his work and legacy. Can you tell us about those? I understand one of them sort of grew out of a DOE project originally, and of course we're familiar with the controversy that all happened there. But can you tell us how that came about?
Yeah, well, I started the Oppenheimer project to have some family representation of my grandfather's views. I was inspired by the Department of Energy starting their own program, and I said we should have a program in the family. And so I think by looking back at my grandfather's views and his advice about what to do with fission energy, it's something that the world needs. So I view our role as repeating his original advice, advocating for it, which a lot of it has to do with international cooperation, but it's also a new generation. So a program that we've really focused on in the Oppenheimer project that I didn't get to talk about on stage is working with climate philanthropists and getting them to look at nuclear energy as a source. A lot of the climate philanthropists supported. They care about climate change. They want carbon free. They supported solar and wind. And we say, look at nuclear. It's also a clean one. So that's a big operating thing that we do at the Oppenheimer project.
You went to Japan not too long ago and visited there. I think our viewers and listeners would be interested in how that trip went for you with your family connections. How were you received in Japan? And I understand you even went to the atomic bomb cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. How was that?
Well, I was received very well. It's like most things, it starts with having the right friends. So I have friends in Japan who would welcome me over and given me advice. Similar to Tennessee, I've got friends in Tennessee who invited me. So that was very helpful. And the advice, one of the, I have a dual mission, and the Oppenheimer entities. One is to reduce the threat of nuclear weapons, the other increase nuclear energy. And either side of that equation, I'm happy to work on. But when I go to Japan, I just have to talk about and the situation. And so it was great to go and visit the Hiroshima and meet survivors there. And I felt a lot of kinship with them, because a lot of people still alive who've been alive in World War II spent a lot of their time not just sitting and thinking about, I'm a survivor of World War II. That's not how they lived their life, just how I didn't live my life, saying my main thing is being an Oppenheimer. But now, later in my life, I'm saying I am an Oppenheimer. I'm going to deal with it and talk about it. And so there's a lot of kinship with the Japanese individuals and the press. I found they knew a lot about my grandfather's thoughts, his policy, his advice. So it wasn't a simplistic view of, America's bad. They bombed us. It was nothing like that. It was great.
Well, he had been there in, I think in 1960. He took a trip to Japan, and at that time, I guess 15 years after the end of the war, he was advised not to go
That's right.
to those cities. And but you found it to be quite different when you.
Yeah, and I assume his friends gave him the right advice, but he was very well received, and he probably would have, knowing the Japanese now a little bit, he probably would have been very well received in Hiroshima too. People understand his position. You know, he was doing what he had to for his country.
You've taken a position on nuclear weapons that you would prefer that there not be an arms race,
Yeah.
that there be more global cooperation on the weapons front. Can you talk about that a little bit? What your thoughts are on weapons today?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I go back to my grandfather's advice and the scientists, Niels Bohr and Fermi and Lawrence. What they saw at the end of World War II is that it would be tempted in the United States to have a policy that would cause an arms race, and that policy would be trying to keep fission an American secret and have the only nuclear weapons in the world. But they saw from a first principle that that would never work. And the reason they understood that that wouldn't work is it wasn't a political issue. It's a fact of nature that as scientists, they knew that other scientists could understand what they understood and get their own bombs. And I think the politicians at the time were just too tempted to say, hey, this is a secret. We have the only ones. Let's keep it secret, keep it for ourselves. And that just was not a policy that would work to prevent an arms race. So there was a brief time where you could have prevented it. And actually, David Lilienthal, the head of TVA, worked with Oppenheimer and a lot of industrialists, and they came together with this policy to say the only way to prevent this arms race is to cooperate around fissionable material. And when I look back and say, if they had actually done that, taken their advice, we would be living in a world that wouldn't even have the threats that we think of today. We'd have abundant nuclear energy because people wouldn't have affiliated them only with weapons. And climate change, our other big threat, wouldn't even be a serious threat with that much nuclear energy. So you can't recast the past, you have to accept it. So I say, well, we have an arms race, what do we do now? My answer to it in today's world is increasing nuclear energy, which increases the cooperation we need.
Now, you never met your grandfather, right? He died a few years before you were born, it's my understanding.
Correct.
When did you first realize that you had this icon, nuclear icon in your family, and what he meant in American history? When did you first know about that?
Well, the version I remember is probably what any kid would hear about their grandfather. Grandfather was, in a big war, and he had to do what he had to do like a soldier, except he was a scientist. That's the version I heard, and I think any kid who has a veteran grandparent would hear the same thing. Grandfather in a war, he did what he had to do. So my growing understanding of it was just, as I got older and kind of understood a little more around history, and our family was very much downplayed. Walk around and say I'm part of a famous family, so I kind of had to discover that on my own. So that was part of the experience.
Well, with the surname that you have, how is that when you go to places, check into hotels or whatever it is, especially after the movie came out? Does that create a level of interest?
The movie has actually changed that measurably. Like sometimes in my family, my wife and kids get it a lot. Like Oppenheimer, like the movie. They have no idea that we're related. And so there's certain circumstances where I bring it up and talk to you, but not always. So that's a fact. It used to be if I met somebody who's a scientist or a historian, I might offer it. But now it comes up a lot more.
Well, you told one interviewer, I understand that you were surprised at the success of the movie, how big it was. Why were you surprised? What caused that?
I mean, Nolan was surprised too. I got to say, they thought he really wanted to make the movie because he cared about the subject, but he didn't know that it would be the kind of success it was. So it just really hit the world at the right time. Nobody had been to a movie for 2.5 years, and it was about nuclear issues, right? And the convergence of AI in Ukraine. And it's a lot bigger deal than I've seen movies and books, plays and operas come out about my grandfather my whole life, and frankly, they don't pay that much attention to him. And this one was a lot bigger impact.
Well, you met Cillian Murphy on the set, I understand, in New Mexico.
I did.
How was that?
it was fine.
How was that for him? It must have been.
He was impressed.
It's probably harder for him.
He was starstruck.
Yeah.
Second. But we're all just people, so
Yeah.
it's one thing about being affiliated with fame is you figure that out a lot faster. So if I'm in a movie star, it may be I don't expect much more than conversation from that person.
Yeah. Well, let's end with some of your overall thoughts on the nuclear renaissance. That's what this meeting is about here.
But can we rename it the exuberance?
We think nuclear exuberance,
Right.
And
We're trying to make that happen because the Renaissance was used in 2008 and that didn't end so well. We think this exuberance now has a chance, but it's got to be different.
We'll take note of that. That's a good. That's a
I don't know
good
if
way
we've got it
do
to catch on, but we're trying.
But in terms of what's happening with small modular reactors, the advanced fuels, the uranium enrichment capabilities, how are you looking at all that? What do you see for the future? You think nuclear is on its way back now?
Well, there's a lot of excitement and exuberance, and I think it's going to make this transition. And what's exciting about it is that, once some projects start, some success happens, and then I think we'll see the flywheel of what everybody expects to happen. And to me, it's just the vibe or the feeling of the industry reminds me of the tech industry in 1997 when I got to San Francisco. You could feel it. The internet was happening. And I think this is the industry for the next year. So it's in a great place.
Well, you're a Silicon Valley guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where you're located now, and you're involved in the financial side of these energy projects. Is that right? Yeah. So you have a pretty unique view of it, I guess, as to what it's going to take to make it happen. And one of the things I hear you saying is we need to see these projects actually come to life and not talk about them all the time, but see some things happening and more behind them to establish the performance that we need to see to make nuclear real again.
Morning, guys.
Yeah, that's right. There's always the danger of talking about a thing a lot and then not doing it. And there's so much excitement and support around it. We don't want to get into the building, proving itself, getting down on the cost curve in this situation that's worrisome that, there won't be another chance. Because we have
Charles Oppenheimer, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. Really appreciate you.